Well, I'm joined now by Iain Duncan Smith, leading Brexiteer, who last time backed Mrs May's deal. Are you happy at the idea of trying to get this agreement through on the back of Labour votes?
No, I'm absolutely appalled, I have to tell you. I'm appalled for three reasons. The first is, listening interestingly to Penny Mordaunt, that it's quite clear the Cabinet wasn't really in favour of this, no matter what the spin now from the government is. There were real deep misgivings in the Cabinet. Why? Because we have council candidates and people in marginal seats up and down the land fighting against what is an extremely harsh Labour Party run by a Marxist whose sole purpose in life is to do real damage to the country. And now what the government, who have attacked him non-stop, do is they reach out to him and give him the kind of legitimacy that governments can do by asking if they will help join them and deliver something. So although you talked about risks to Mr Corbyn, I think the risks to the government are far greater, because even if Mr Corbyn looks reasonable, goes and makes his presentation, government doesn't accept it, who looks unreasonable at that point? Not Mr Corbyn, but the government looks unreasonable. But in the meantime, they've legitimised him, and I think that's a real fear for many, many of us in the party.
You made the argument at the last vote on Mrs May's deal to your colleagues that grasp the Brexit that you were offered rather than put it at risk. If Mrs May says to you, look, you can have Brexit, but it is going to have to include Mr Corbyn's demand of a customs union, would that be acceptable?
Well, it's certainly not acceptable to me. I can't speak for my colleagues. I have to say that when I voted to leave, and when I believe 17.4 million people did, they voted to leave, they did not countenance the idea that we would leave, but leave ourselves in a worse position by locked back into the European Union with all the decisions being taken in the European Union. That was never on the cards, no matter what people say. So the government's job is and was to deliver Brexit. And the outstanding point is, we have made all the preparations. They must now recognise that leaving without the withdrawal deal isn't leaving without a deal, because there'll be lots of other deals over aircraft, ports, everything else. Most, and if not all of them, have been done. So the question now outstanding is the government still in Project Fear, or are they actually genuinely prepared to deliver on what 17.4 million people said? And it wasn't stay in the customs union as a rule taker whilst we kind of go through the tokenistic position of being out.
If, however, Mrs May does decide to go down the route of agreement with Mr Corbyn, and yes, if that involves a customs union, so be it, how great is the risk to Mrs May and the danger of a split, a real split in the Tory party?
I have bent over backwards to try and help the Prime Minister, quite rightly, and the government to get an arrangement through that gives us an opportunity to at least finally completely leave. But I have to say that anything that goes on behind these closed doors, or indicative votes, or any additions to this, make it absolutely clear that this is no longer what I would call conservative government policy. This becomes policy dictated by what I think is a Marxist and rather nasty Labour Party out there, and I simply say that that makes all of our lives intolerable out on the ground. People standing in the mayor elections, council candidates.
What do you do about it?
Well, the answer is we have a vote here, and if that is what's on the table, then I do not see how the Conservative Party, the vast majority, can possibly bring themselves to support a deal which is so reneged on what was originally A, in our manifesto, B, what we voted for when we all overwhelmingly voted for the Article 50 letter, and most importantly, what Mrs May has said endlessly she would not accept. Now, this is a major moment, and I would simply counsel my government and my party and my Prime Minister, stop. Think very carefully what you are doing. If you give legitimacy to a man that I think is genuinely not fit to run Britain and will do it damage, you will damage the very prospects of your own party, and most importantly for people like me, the prospects for our country.
Okay, Iain Duncan Smith, thanks very much indeed. Well, an indication of the difficulties ahead for Mrs May amid signs that Number 10 want to move at pace. Suggestions they'll have a meeting with Mr Corbyn after Prime Minister's questions today in the hope of securing some sort of deal tonight. If that all goes according to plan, then the expectation is that Mrs May could come back with her meaningful vote on this new deal tomorrow.
Norman, thank you very much.